Welcome to the Hrafn Viking Shipyard podcast. My name is Andy Bennett. I'm building a replica of a 7.7 meter long Viking workboat that was found in Denmark, and it dates to 1130 AD. The original boat was used for fishing and transporting people and goods. Evidence of wear and tear suggests that the boat was used for about 50 years before it was abandoned and became buried in the mud. My shipyard is comprised of my garage workshop and a backyard with a beach and a dock on Reschenau Lake in Lino Lakes, Minnesota. My main source for Viking boat dimensions and construction methods comes from an online open source project. I plan to publish video podcasts on the various steps that I followed to build a replica of this 900-year-old Danish Lapstrake sailboat, including construction of specialized tools, the workspaces, and the steps that I go through to build the boat. So, if you want to know how to build a Viking sailboat, please like this video and subscribe to my podcast so that you don't miss any episodes. Helping hands are also welcome around the Hrafn Viking Shipyard, so please stop by and visit if you're in the Minneapolis area. Thanks. Today's podcast covers how I am building a 1/8 scale model of the Viking workboat. My objective in doing this is to get a good understanding of how the major components come together. The keel and the stem pieces, for example, and how each row of the hull planks must be shaped and layered. Building a scale model of the boat is kind of a dress rehearsal that will help me to visualize and plan for construction of the full-size vessel. I can make mistakes on a small scale so that I don't make them on a large scale when it comes time to actually build the boat. The model can also serve as a convenient and hopefully an attractive visual display. I'm using basswood for the model's main structural skeleton pieces: the keel, the bow and stern stems, and the various cross-member frames and bulkheads, as well as for the hull planking. Let me show you the planking pieces. Basswood has a fine grain and it's got a smooth texture and is one of the most suitable hardwood species for detailed hand carving. It isn't really durable enough for use in actual boat construction, but it's perfect for a 1/8 scale model. The first step in making a 1/8 scale of the Viking boat is to take the dimensions from the open source project, which are in metric, and transfer those to a graph sheet. And then I divide those by 8 because I want to make a 1/8 scale model of that boat. And then I sketch that out onto the graph sheet. Here I've done the forestem of the Gislinge boat, and then I cut that out and I transfer that onto basswood, which is a really easy wood to carve, and then I put that on a bandsaw and I cut out the rough shape of the forestem so I can begin to carve that as the forestem of the Viking boat. And now I'm working on the aft stem of the Gislinge to do the very same thing. And then I'll move on to the keel and I'll do the same thing. And then I'll cut that out, rough it out on a bandsaw, and then I'll do the shaping by hand with carving tools. So we'll see how that goes. Ships. And this basswood really provides some intricate detail even at the 1/8 scale model. You can see at the tip here, it really holds the detail even though you're at this tiny scale. So it's a good kind of wood to work with if you're making models. So this is what the model looks like with the stems joined to the keel and the first plank on both sides of the keel joined on there with 1/8 scale rivets made out of the brads. And you can see they're just pounded right in there, right onto the keel all the way down. And the next layer, the next row of planks will go right onto the next one. They join to the stems, and then they just layer right on. Lapstrake clinker style build, and that fastens on the same way. It goes right through the one layer onto the next one, and then they're riveted together. And that's how they're built. So the cost for this model with the balsa wood, or excuse me, not balsa wood, basswood, was about $70. And then for the brads, to snip those down, the cost of the brads was about another $10. So the overall model, to build just the model of the boat, was about $80 for me. And I think that's worth doing. I discovered some of the things that I might have made a mistake on in the larger boat that will save me a great amount of time by making the model. One of those things was making sure that I have the angles of the planks carved out correctly, and make sure you take the time to do that correctly the first time and get the angles correct, because if you do that incorrectly, then you're going to have a lot of trouble getting the right contours of your boat. And that was a good learning experience for me. So well worth the $80 of doing it at the 1/8 scale. And it was a good practice exercise, especially making these stem pieces and carving them out at that scale before I start doing it with a chainsaw and an axe, and getting it carved out at the very large scale on large white oak pieces. So I hope you found this video useful, and I'll continue to build on this model as I go through it, as I go through the overall build process. And I'll be building the different pieces at the model scale, basically just in time, just before I go to the large scale.